My wife's affair with our mutual friend stole $200, $0 from our joint account. Then she secretly signed over the house and inheritance to him. Now she's claiming I'm the thief in a bitter legal battle over everything we built. I never saw it coming, honestly. One day, everything was normal. Well, as normal as it could be when you're married to someone who acts distant sometimes. But then I stumbled on something that turned my world upside down. It's like I found out my wife, Lisa, had been cheating on me with our close friend, Mark, and she'd stolen a fortune from us in the process. I mean, who the hell does that? I always thought we had a good life, solid, built on trust. Turns out I was blind. It all started about 6 months ago. Lisa had been acting weird, secretive texts, late nights, her phone always locked. At first, I figured she was just stressed at work or maybe dealing with some personal stuff. She'd brush me off when I asked, say I was paranoid or imagining things, but I could tell something was off. She'd get defensive whenever I pressed her, and she'd snap at me if I tried to go through her phone or her stuff. I thought maybe she was hiding something, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then came the day I found her phone lying on the kitchen table, unlocked. I saw a message pop up from Mark, something casual, but then I noticed the number of texts exchanged, dozens, sometimes late at night. I scrolled through a few and saw things that made my stomach turn. Flirty messages, plans to meet up, even talk about keeping it secret. That was the first time I really started to suspect something was going on. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there. I decided to dig deeper. I started checking her social media, her emails, even her bank statements when she wasn't looking. It was easier than I thought. I had access to our joint accounts, and I noticed a suspicious transfer of about $200, $0 from our savings account. Just gone. No explanation, no warning. That was a huge chunk of our life savings. I couldn't believe it. I felt sick. How could she do this? How could she steal from us like that? Then I found out she'd secretly signed over the house and even our inheritance to Mark. I couldn't believe my eyes. She'd been planning this all along, probably. The house, the money, everything we worked for gone. And for what? Some guy she'd been lying about. I started putting the pieces together. The late nights, the secret meetings, the way she'd gotten so defensive every time I asked about her whereabouts. It all made sense now. She'd been cheating on me, lying, stealing from me, while pretending everything was fine. I confronted her that night. I didn't hold back. I told her I knew about everything, the affair, the money, the house. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer like I was the one in the wrong. She lied, of course, said Mark was just a friend, that I was paranoid, that I was overreacting. She called me crazy, said I was making it all up, that I was jealous or insecure. But I had the proof. Every damn piece. Her reaction made me furious. She was so cold, so dismissive, like I was just some obstacle to her new life with Mark. It was surreal. The emotional hit me hard. I was furious, betrayed, humiliated. How could she do this? How could she steal from me, lie to my face, then turn around and blame me for everything? I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal. I'd trusted her with everything, our money, our future, even my heart. And she threw it all away for some guy who clearly didn't care about her or us. The pain was overwhelming. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every thought was about what she'd done, what I'd lost. But at the same time, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it. I started thinking about revenge, about how I could make her pay for what she did. Not just emotionally, but financially. She thought she could cheat, steal, and walk away scot-free. No way. That's when I started planning my next move. She might have taken our money and signed over the house, but I wasn't done yet. I had a few tricks up my sleeve. The game was on. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with everything. My mind started racing, how to turn this nightmare into my advantage. I needed to know exactly what she'd done, how deep her lies went, and what I could do to stop her from destroying what was left of our lives. The first thing I did was dig into the legal documents she'd signed, trying to understand what she transferred and when. Turns out, she had gone to a shady lawyer behind my back, signing over the deed to Mark, claiming it was for investment purposes. Yeah, right. I got a copy of everything I could find, bank statements, the property transfer papers, her emails with Mark, even some encrypted messages I managed to access. It was shocking how far she'd gone. She'd even managed to hide the fact that she'd taken out a loan against the house before transferring ownership, leaving me with a huge debt I knew nothing about. It was clear she'd planned this for months, maybe longer. Every lie she told, every excuse she made, suddenly felt like part of a bigger, darker scheme. I also found out that she'd been funneling money into Mark's accounts, using fake invoices and shell companies she'd set up. She manipulated the legal system to sign over the house and her inheritance, claiming she was doing it for our future, but in reality she was lining her pockets and his. I was furious. How could she be so cold, so calculating? I started to get an even clearer picture of her greed and betrayal. She'd been cheating, stealing, and lying for months, all behind my back. That's when I decided I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer I knew, someone who specialized in property and financial crimes. I wanted to get an emergency injunction to freeze her accounts and stop her from selling or transferring anything else. I didn't trust her anymore. She was already spinning stories, claiming I was the one stealing money, that I was jealous and paranoid. But I had proof now, and I was ready to fight back. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act of innocence, trying to gaslight me every chance she got. She'd call me crazy, say I was imagining things, accuse me of controlling her. She even had the nerve to say she was doing everything for us, that I was just insecure and jealous of Mark. It was laughable if it weren't so heartbreaking. She was so good at lying, twisting the truth, making herself the victim, but I saw through her now. Every word, every gesture was part of her lies. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her texts, recordings of her calls with Mark, copies of all the financial transactions. I wanted to have everything ready for the legal battle ahead. I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my dignity, my trust, and what was left of our life together. Every day felt like a war, and I was determined not to let her win. I also reached out to some friends who knew her well, people I thought I could trust. I needed allies, witnesses, anyone who could back up my story. I was angry, hurt, but also resolute. She thought she could get away with this, but I was going to make sure she paid. Not just financially, but emotionally. She might have stolen from me, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I was ready to expose her lies, confront her publicly if I had to, and reclaim what was rightfully mine. The worst part. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about the fact that the woman I loved and trusted had turned into someone I barely recognized, someone capable of lying, cheating, and stealing everything we'd built. It made me question everything, every moment, every memory. But I knew I had to stay strong. I had to fight for what was left, for what I deserved. And I was just getting started. Once I had all the evidence laid out, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let Lisa continue her scheme without consequences. I contacted my lawyer again, laid out everything I'd uncovered, her forged signatures, the transfer of the house, the money she'd siphoned off. The lawyer was sharp, immediately understanding the gravity of the situation. We filed for an emergency injunction to freeze all her accounts and stop any further legal transfers of property. I also started the process of contesting her ownership claims, pushing to have everything reversed or at least frozen until the truth came out. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude didn't change. She kept up her act of being the innocent victim, crying crocodile tears and trying to spin stories about how I was controlling her, how she only did all this for our future. She told everyone I was the one stealing, that I was just paranoid and insecure. I could see through her lies, but it still hurt. The fact that she was so brazen about it, so dismissive of my feelings, made it worse. She was convinced she was the victim, even as she was blatantly caught in her own web of lies. I started planning my next move. I reached out to some friends, people who knew her well, hoping to get some support and maybe even witnesses who could testify to her behavior. I wanted to make sure I had backup if things got ugly in court. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been laundering money through fake accounts, setting up shell companies, and even using her inheritance to fund her escape plan. It was like she was building a new life behind my back, leaving me with nothing. The emotional toll was brutal. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, smirking, lying, pretending to be the victim. I'd been so blind, so trusting. I kept replaying all the signs I missed, all the moments I brushed off because I loved her. Now, I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed everything we had. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt angry, betrayed, and exhausted all at once. But I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to stay focused. I started documenting everything, saving all her messages, recording her calls when possible, copying transactions, and taking notes on her behavior. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case and that I'd be ready for whatever court threw at us. The legal battle was just beginning, but I was determined to fight for what was mine: my house, my money, my reputation. I also began to realize how much I'd been emotionally invested in this woman. I had loved her, trusted her, and built our life together. Now that trust was shattered, replaced by a bitter sense of betrayal. I felt like I was mourning a loss I couldn't undo. But I also knew I had to let go of the hope that she'd change or that things could somehow go back to the way they were. No, I had to accept that this was my new reality. Every day was a new challenge. I had moments of rage, moments of sadness, moments where I questioned everything. But I kept telling myself, this isn't just about money or property. It's about my dignity, about standing up for myself and refusing to be a victim of her lies anymore. I was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant fighting her in court, exposing her to everyone, or just walking away from it all. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal cuts deep, but you have to keep fighting for your truth. By the time I had all my ducks in a row, I knew I couldn't delay any longer. The legal process was moving fast. I'd managed to get the injunction in place, but I also had to prepare for a full-blown court battle. My lawyer told me that Lisa's story was full of holes, but she'd be doing her best to spin her lies. That's when I realized I had to be even more strategic. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find: photos, emails, text messages, bank transactions, even her phone logs. I wanted to show a pattern of deception, greed, and manipulation. One night, I decided to confront her. Directly, I told her I knew she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing. Her face twisted, that bitchy smirk returning. She tried to dismiss me, claiming I was crazy, paranoid, and that she'd never done anything wrong. She said she loved me, that Mark was just a friend, that the money transfer was a mistake, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I had everything documented, everything proofed. I threw her own lies back at her, watching her squirm. She got defensive, shouting that I was ruining her life, that I was controlling her, that I was jealous of Mark. She even accused me of stealing money myself. What a joke. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was so good at twisting the truth, turning herself into the victim. But I stayed calm. I knew I had the upper hand, and I was just waiting for the right moment to hit her with the full weight of everything I'd uncovered. The emotional toll was intense. I felt anger boiling inside me, but also a deep sadness. I'd loved her once. I'd trusted her with my life. And now I saw her for what she really was: manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I kept replaying the moments when I missed the signs, when I dismissed her behavior as stress or work problems. Now I knew those were just cover stories she used to hide her real plans. I started talking to friends, trusted colleagues, people who knew her. I needed witnesses, people who could testify to her behavior, her lies, her manipulation. I wanted the court to see her true face, not just the one she was trying to sell. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be innocent, claiming she was the victim. That only fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let her spin her web of lies and walk away with everything. The more I dug, the more I realized how deeply she'd manipulated the system. She'd used fake signatures, forged documents, even lied to the lawyer she hired in secret. She'd taken out loans against the house, siphoned off inheritance money, and hidden assets in shell companies, all to cover her tracks. I felt like I was fighting a ghost. Every time I thought I had her cornered, she'd come up with another lie or another scheme. But I wasn't giving up. I also started reaching out to some of Mark's other friends, people who'd been involved in the scheme. I wanted to hear their side, get more dirt, and maybe even get some witnesses to testify against her. This was no longer just about money. It was about exposing her true nature. I had to make sure everyone knew she was a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. In the meantime, I kept reminding myself that I had to stay strong. This was the hardest thing I'd ever gone through, but I refused to be the victim. I was going to stand up for myself, for what was rightfully mine. I'd fought for our marriage once, but now I was fighting for my dignity. She thought she could cheat, steal, and lie her way out of this. Well, she was about to see that the truth always comes out. And when it does, it leaves nothing but ruin for those who try to hide it. The court date was set, and I knew I had to be ready. Everything I'd gathered, photos, emails, bank statements, recorded phone calls, was meticulously organized. I wanted to present a case so airtight that even her most convincing lies wouldn't hold up. The day of the hearing, I felt a mixture of anger and resolve. I knew she'd come prepared to lie her way out of everything, but I was ready. I was determined to turn her own web of deception against her. Lisa arrived at the courthouse looking smug, like she was already winning. She had that bitchy smirk, acting like she was the victim, crying crocodile tears to the judge. She spun her usual lies about how she only wanted what was best for us, how she'd been misunderstood, and how I'd controlled her. She claimed the money transfer was a mistake, that she had no idea about the loans or the shell companies she'd set up. She even had her lawyer argue that I was the one stealing money, an outright lie that I knew would blow up in her face. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything step by step. I showed the court the evidence of her affair with Mark, the fraudulent transfers, her forged signatures, the hidden accounts. I explained how she'd manipulated the legal system, forged documents, and siphoned off our inheritance. I pointed out her lies, her manipulations, and her blatant greed. My voice was steady, but inside I was boiling with rage. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some naive husband. I was a man who had been betrayed on every level. The judge listened carefully, asking questions about the evidence I presented. I could see Lisa squirming under the scrutiny. She tried to deny everything, but I had too much proof. When I finished, the judge paused, then announced that they would freeze all her assets, halt the transfer of the house, and appoint a financial trustee to oversee the estate until everything was sorted out. I could see the shock on Lisa's face. She'd underestimated what I was capable of, and now she was realizing she'd lost control. But Lisa wasn't done fighting. She threw herself into a new round of lies, claiming I was harassing her, that I'd been controlling her every move. She even tried to turn the court against me, saying I'd been abusive and jealous. I knew she was just desperate. Her plan had fallen apart, and she was trying to save what little she had left. The court didn't buy her lies, at least not this time. They ordered her to provide full financial disclosures, and they set a hearing for a full trial. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. On one hand, I managed to stop her from further ruining our lives, at least for now. On the other, I knew this wasn't over. She'd fight back, and I'd have to stay vigilant. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I had fought for the truth, for what was rightfully mine, and I'd won some small victory. Still, the pain of betrayal lingered. I trusted her, loved her, and she'd turned into someone I barely recognized. That night I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the documents and evidence I'd collected. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, the theft, and felt a deep, bitter sadness. I'd lost my wife, yes, but I'd also gained a clearer understanding of who she really was. I realized I'd been holding on to a false hope for too long, convincing myself things would change. Now I saw the truth. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to face the devastation head-on, pick up the pieces, and rebuild from scratch. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll get everything back, my house, my money, my dignity. Or maybe I'll have to start over alone. Either way, I know I'll never let someone betray me like that again. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's damn hard to repair. But I learned a lot from this nightmare. Mainly that you can't ignore the signs and you can't let someone's lies go unchecked. Sometimes you have to fight for yourself, no matter how painful it gets. And in the end, that's what I intend to do. After everything that happened, after the court hearings, the legal battles, and the endless nights of trying to piece my life back together, I realized something profound. Betrayal like that changes you. It leaves scars, sure, but it also sharpens your sense of what's real and what's just smoke and mirrors. I thought I knew Lisa. I thought I knew us. But in the end, I learned that trust isn't something you can take for granted. It has to be earned, maintained, and protected fiercely. Looking back now, I see how blind I was. I ignored the signs, dismissed the small red flags that grew into this huge, destructive lie. I kept telling myself she was stressed, that she was just going through a rough patch. But the truth was, she was building this web of lies right under my nose. I was so caught up in our life together in the hope that things would somehow turn out okay, that I didn't see her for what she really was. That's a mistake I won't make again. The thing that hits hardest is how much I lost, my trust, my faith in her, our future. But I also gained something valuable, clarity. I see now that I never truly knew her, not the woman she was pretending to be. I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I fought for what was rightfully mine, not just the money or the house, but my dignity, my self-respect. I refused to be a victim of her greed and lies. I've started to rebuild slowly, painfully, but steadily. I've put the house on the market, cleaned out the emotional baggage, and begun to focus on myself. The betrayal was a wake-up call. It's made me realize I need to be more cautious, more aware of the people I let into my life. Trust is earned, not given blindly. I've learned to listen to my gut, to spot the signs early, and to never ignore the small red flags again. As for Lisa, I hope she gets what she deserves. I hope she feels the weight of her actions someday, that she understands the pain she caused. But I won't be part of that pain anymore. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about protecting myself from further damage and moving on. I've already started that process, and I'm confident I'll come out of this stronger than before. So, if there's anything I want to say to anyone reading this, trust your instincts. Don't dismiss the little signs, even if they seem insignificant at first. People reveal who they truly are in moments of crisis. And when you see someone betraying your trust, like stealing your money, lying about affairs, or signing over your property, stand up for yourself. Fight for what's yours, protect your peace, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for doing what's right. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness and security is you, no one else. And I've learned that lesson the hard way. But I'm grateful for it, because now I know what real strength looks like. And I'm finally ready to move forward, free from the lies, the betrayal, and the pain.